All right, welcome back to the War Room, y'all. We are here for our annual college football preview for the 2024-2025 season. The boys are back. We're talking about something other than dirt bikes and Formula One cars for once. It's been a minute since the draft, actually, for the NFL. But we're here talking about college football now. And look, I will say before we even get into it, the new NCAA 25 game or the college football 25 game has been just chef's kiss, beautiful, right? But just – oh my goodness. Like the greatest thing, like basically if someone managed to reinvent the wheel successfully, that's what that game is. It's beautiful.
I cried when I opened the game for the first time.
Yep. I mean, I've never played a video game and got that intense while playing it too. My wife didn't know what was going on. She was like, just chilling, reading a book in the bedroom. And she was asking me to come over there and deal with something with the cat. And I was like, I'm trying to teach these kids about life. Okay. We're trying to win a championship. I'm trying to run a program. Okay, a program, not a program, a program in this building, okay? And I got one of my kids that's trying to go out on a Friday night. And no, we got film, okay? We got to take care of this, teaching life lessons, okay? It's how into it you got to get to be successful, especially when you're playing on varsity, okay? Or what? No, it's All-American? Heisman.
Heisman mode.
I just slid it all the way to the right and said cowabunga it is. So, anywho, so that was something awesome, big change. But speaking of big changes, we got a lot going into the season. We got the 12-team playoff. We got some conference realignment stuff. There's a lot to talk about. So we're going to start off with that, and then we'll give some wild predictions with a new segment we'll be debuting in the middle of the show, and then we're going to close with talking about, hey, let's go conference by conference and kind of just talk about what we think is going to happen going in there. So, Bert, what do you want to start with? I mean, you've got a laundry list to pick from. What's the biggest change you've seen?
Let's start with the 12-team playoff. I think this opens the door for a lot of teams, and not necessarily your Alabamas, your Ohio States, your Georgias, your Clemsons, but I mean everybody I think has an opportunity to make the playoff. I mean, all of a sudden this opens the door for like teams that have 2 losses or even 3 or 4 losses to possibly get in, and I mean, that enough said, right? I think of teams like Ole Miss that's hit the transfer portal pretty hard this offseason. All of a sudden, and I know it pains me to say this, but like
I'm about to say
it's a reality now. It's teams with 2 or 3 losses can make the playoff and they can make a push,
Yeah, which I'm so happy about, because the one thing I hate is like, especially with the way the transfer portal is working now, for just one loss could just be a death penalty to a whole team season, right? I like for more teams to be able to be in it. I like for the opportunity to have a turnaround season, and you obviously ain't going to be able to do that like you in the NFL, to where like you could have like just a 9-win season, barely make it into a wild card game, upset somebody at home, and run it all the way over to the championship game. But you could be a guy that drops 2, and you're in the SEC, and maybe you get that 12th spot.
Well, I mean, you look at some of the schedules for some of these conferences. I mean, it is. I don't see how even some of the blue-blooded programs like Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, like I don't know how you can come out of that conference without a loss, like at least one loss,
Oregon.
Right? Exactly, and then you turn around and you have to play your conference championship game as well, and I mean, easily, if you drop one game during the season and then you lose the conference championship game, usually, I mean, with the 14 playoff, that was a death sentence. You're done. That's your season. And then,
Washington and Oregon this past
all of a sudden, you have guys that don't want to play in the bowl games because they want to declare for the draft, and it just takes everything away. And now everybody has an opportunity. And, I think I've said this before on the podcast, but I mean, the first year the playoff was implemented with the 4 teams, I mean, it was already shown that it was flawed, right?
Yeah.
Ohio State was the 4 seed and they went in and won the whole thing, right? And so if a number 4 ranked team can go and win the whole thing, who's to say a 5 seed couldn't go and win the whole thing, or a 6 or a 7
or a 10
or a 10, exactly. And especially, of course, you're going to have those top teams at the very pinnacle of college football with those 1 losses and stuff. But like, again, when you start getting into those teams with 2 losses, it's very hard to distinguish between the teams. Like which losses are better than other losses, which wins are better than other wins. And I mean, another example is Florida State from last year, right? You know, you go undefeated and yet you don't make the college football playoff. And trust me, it was when they made that decision, it was the right decision, right? To put Alabama in over Florida State. I think everybody was on board with that minus Florida State, but they should still have that opportunity, right? They should still be able to go. You're undefeated in a Power 5, or I guess now Power 4 conference. You should have the opportunity to go play and prove it on the field.
Yeah, and I think what this also allows for is like the decisions for playoff seeds in particular can be made with less fear of a flop, right?
Absolutely.
So like if you have a hot team that goes undefeated and maybe they had a crappy schedule or whatever, but they're still in one of the Power 4 conferences like Notre Dame does every year, you can put those guys in, but not have to sacrifice a team that has a really great record, but maybe has 1 loss, right? So there'll be less of those scenarios to where when the inevitable Notre Dame, who schedules Iowa State Penitentiary Junior College for half their games and has one big, top 25 win as their staple, and this is why we should go in there, essentially they'll be able to then go, it's okay. We can let you in. And if you get destroyed, we're not going to get a bunch of hate for it because that's what playoffs are about. Like what the beauty of playoffs is, if it's a true playoff to where it's more than, 2 rounds, it allows for teams that had a really strong strength of schedule, but maybe lost by a field goal or something like that, to have 1 or 2 losses to get hot in the playoffs, as we see in the NFL many times. Like it allows those, experienced teams and, playoff caliber teams to be able to make a run. There is no run. There's no run or there's no getting hot in the previous playoff format. It's win this game, done. There's no, there's no 12 seed going 3 rounds deep or something like that, right? So that's what I love is like you still get the freedom to put in those stupid teams that everyone knows is a paper tiger, like how Clemson was for many years before they had Trevor Lawrence, Notre Dame every freaking time, and you can still also then supplement that with, okay, here's your paper tiger team. Guess what? Your test is you're going to play 1-loss Georgia as your first game. Good luck. And when the beatdown happens, the focus won't necessarily be on, man, that Notre Dame team should have never been in the playoffs. It's, wow, watch out for this Georgia team. They got hot in the playoffs. Right?
Cole,
so that's what I love about it. More positivity.
I think you're hitting on a really interesting point here. So we talk about like 10-2 teams now automatically having a chance to be in the playoff, right? I think you're going to start seeing certain conferences starting to say that our 10-2 teams are not the same as your 10-2 teams, right? I think you're going to start seeing specifically the Big Ten and the SEC start saying that, Oregon over here has a loss to Ohio State and Michigan, right? Tennessee has a loss to Georgia and Alabama, but yet that 2-loss team is not the same as a Baylor or TCU that has lost to Kansas State or has lost to Oklahoma State. I think there's going to be that's going to be a consequence of the 12-team playoff, is just you're going to start seeing certain conferences say that our teams that have more losses are better than your teams that have 1 loss or no losses.
Yeah. Well, I think the main problem you could also run into, and I'm about to put Thomas on the hot seat so we can start talking here, is you could see someone that has like a top 10 or a top 25 matchup with another harder conference, like an SEC or a Big 10, that then goes and runs the Big 12, wins out, but they have that 1 loss to like an Auburn or an Ole Miss or something like that. And then Thomas, I'm just going to put you in the voter seats as far as for all the guys who get to cast votes for the playoff this year. I think this is the toughest situation you're going to have is, what would you take? Would you take an 11-1 Utah that lost an out of conference game to like an Ole Miss or like maybe a Michigan or a Penn State that got hot the rest of the season, won their conference, or maybe just came up short of the conference championship but ran the rest of the time? Or would you take like a 10-2 Penn State?
The real question is, who did Penn State lose to?
Yeah.
You know, because
maybe
if it's Michigan and Oregon and it was just by a field goal, I mean, and Penn State was running through everyone else. I mean, I would rather have Penn State in there.
Yeah, because by that logic, Penn State would have gone to the playoff in this same 12-team scenario the last 4 seasons because they would always just cough up 2 games.
I think. Calm down. Don't talk too much about Penn State.
Look, I'm sorry, Karsten. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I love Penn State. I love Penn State, and I think they have a great shot to make this year's playoffs.
Save it. We'll come back to Penn State.
I think though, also, you kind of on another hand, it's like if that, let's say that Utah team did get in at like 12 or 11, right? Dude, they could make a run.
That's the thing, is we have the opportunity for these lower seeds to make a run. There is no run. Mm-hmm. There is just show up, win a game, great. Now you're in it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, because you could have that Utah team who lost to whoever out of conference at the beginning of the season or whenever they played them, who came just short of the conference championship, but were running through everyone else towards the end of the season. They go into the playoff as a 12 or 11 seed. And then they get matched up with whoever. I don't remember how the seeding is broke down. A team that has one loss from the Big Ten or the SEC or the ACC, and then they beat them. Then you're like, oh crap! Like you start having your Cinderella teams like in March Madness.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. And like I said, that's what's so much healthier about this is there's going to be the inevitable blowout from just a complete. Not even upset. Like everyone will go into it. Okay, these guys may be the higher ranked team, but that's because of their conference or their schedule or whatever it is. But when they get inevitably blown out by a 12 seed or something like that, or whatever happens, it will like everyone will just go, okay, whatever. We didn't have to give not send us a perfect season Florida State team at the sacrifice of these clowns that had this super high seed. We can just go to the fact that look. Those guys got embarrassed, but let's look at this awesome team that had a loss or whatever, barely made the playoff, and then look, now they get an opportunity to make a run. So I think it's just we won't have as much of the – I mean, there's still going to be a lot of this for that 10, 11, 12 seed conversation. You're never going to escape it. You're never going to escape it when there's so many teams and you got to narrow it down to just 12. But at least now it's not all this crap regarding like this – what do you call it? The pageant we always had to do for the last 4 or 5 years with the top 4, which I hated. I just hated the pageantry.
On the back
I hated having to listen to Kirk Herbstreit for 3 hours in a row, talk down all the teams that are borderline that I like, and I mean he wants to talk about a 10-2 Iowa State in the Big 12 3 years ago. It's just like,
but here's the thing on the back end though. It's like if that happens, right? Then you have like a team like I don't know, freaking. Who I think Tulane or JMU, some really good like smaller school. Thank you. Really, and I heard like them thinking like some teams thinking of making like an NIT for college football kind of deal for those teams who get left out, which I think is a pretty cool idea. So you're not playing just worthless bowl games or something. But then you have that conversation of like, oh, what about let's say Utah went 10-2 or 10-2, whatever they have 2 losses, but you have this one of the group of 5 like Liberty or Tulane or whoever, JMU, whoever runs through their conference, blows out everyone, wins their conference championship and is undefeated. Who would you rather let in,
So I see college football kind of taking this route. And it's an interesting dynamic because it literally splits the entire Power 5 into almost 2 categories, right? I think you'll see the ACC and the Big 12 basically come down to these are our guys. This is our one team that is the golden team, right? I guess last year for the ACC it would be like a Florida State. I guess a couple years ago, like a TCU kind of thing. That's our chance. And guess what? You're in, right? Your conference is in. Your conference is represented. Good to go for you. But then I think there's a level with the other two conferences where you have more depth from the front of the conference to the back of the conference, where there's more of an argument to be made that this 2-loss team or this 3-loss team whose their losses are to other teams that are already in the playoff. There's that's where you get in to the playoff. So I like the dynamic of taking a really powerful team from a weaker conference and matching them up with a team that has a worse record against better competition, and letting them play that out on the field and letting that be the decider. It gives everybody a chance to go and prove themselves. And again, you want a chance to go play Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State, Michigan, and Oregon, Washington, whoever, those blue-blooded programs. You want that opportunity, you have to go and beat an 11-1 Kansas State.
Mm-hmm. And like at the minimum, win your conference to even be eligible for something like that. Yeah.
And like I said, we've gone with the 14 playoff. That was the conversation every single time. It was, is a 10-2 Penn State better than an undefeated TCU? Well, now we're going to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, for me, like I said, I'm just so happy that it's not a pageant anymore. Okay, we at least have a method of, if you do X, Y, and Z, you're in the playoff. If you win your conference, you're in, right? And then the pageantry is if you blow it and you don't take care of business on that front, right?
Yep.
So at least you can tell yourself, if you're one of those teams that's having to try to get the other 7 spots and you don't get it because of the pageantry, and Kirk Herbstreit spends 3.5 hours talking your team down and the voters buy into it, along with the other media, you can go, well, we didn't take care of business. We didn't win the conference. So it's like the whole phrase of, we left it to the refs. We shouldn't have left it to the refs. There was at least a way to where you can go into the season saying, if we do this, we are in, and we will not be subject to the pageantry, which is the only downside to both of the formats, but at least it's decreased in value to some degree with the 12-team playoff. So yeah, I mean, I think we've all been begging for this, and it's been a long time coming. It really took them too long to do this. It just felt like there was so much red tape, and also the crowd was like, you guys pulled out the 4-team playoff within probably like a 2-year span. I don't know how they didn't spend 6 years
they're already
together.
They're already talking about expanding it again to
16.
Yeah. It didn't take them longer than maybe 2 years tops to just go, hey, you know how we can make more money?
Mm-hmm.
Making a playoff. And then they did it, but then all of a sudden everyone was like, hey, that was better, but we want more. We want it to be an actual playoff and not a pageant, for just 4 teams. Let's make it a playoff. Let's let these teams make a run. Then it's all, wow, we don't want to, we got to protect the bowl games. And who 6 years later, finally we're here.
Look, SEC Shorts had the best way of describing this whole situation. In one of their videos, they basically said, oh, it's great. We're expanding to 12 teams. And you had Alabama in the corner saying, oh, that's great for everybody else. It's exactly what's going on. So the teams that we're pushing, we want to stay at 4 are the teams that make it every single year. And now it's like, okay, it's not like that anymore. You got to win now. You got to go play your 10-2 Ole Miss.
Exactly. So, hey, good luck, because they can get hot in the playoffs and make a run. So, and they're definitely going to be seeing you again in probably the semifinals, because a 10-2 Ole Miss team could steamroll through out of conference opponents and then be winding up with a, okay, we're seeing you again in 3 weeks. See you in the semifinals. So that's what I love about it. It's beautiful. Now let's talk about some of the movements in conference realignment we've seen. I'll tell you what, one of the ones that I'm excited about, and look, I got biased because I had a relative that played there that still holds, I believe, the all-time receiving touchdowns record for tight ends of Joe Kloffenstein, is Colorado. Back in the Big 12, because actually when he played there, they were still in the Big 12. They're a weird team, bro. They're a weird team, because if you just took Deion Sanders out of the equation, and you just had, hey, we're going to take Coach Joe Schmo and we're going to put him into this team that won a single game, but before he got there, like one single game, maybe two. I think it was just one, actually. I think they just only won one game. And all of a sudden, he takes it from 1 wins to 4 wins, right? You would say, hey, we're in the right direction. Okay, maybe they make a bowl game. Maybe they go 6-6. If that's the case, if you're coming into a team like that and 2 years later you got him in a bowl game, hey, great job. Now you're looking at maybe a winning season in the regular season the following year, and then maybe, but another 3-4 years down the road, you could be looking at potentially recruiting well enough to win your conference. Like, you're getting the momentum. But because Deion had all this talk about the transfer portal, and also it's just Deion Sanders, the hype was there. We had celebrities at games. Also, that win against TCU was honestly one of the worst things to happen to them in regards to all the hype, because that TCU team was a paper tiger. We all knew it. They literally lost all of their team going into that game, but they were still ranked, I think, number 2 or whatever it was going in. They were still at least ranked in the top 10 or top 5 going into that game. They upset that, at TCU's house, I believe, all that stuff. The Colorado State game was one of the most watched games ever. I still go back and watch the game because it was so freaking cool. Like I said, and honestly, they dropped so many games that they should have won, like the Stanford game. They had no business losing that game. They should have at least had 5 wins there. But anywho, all I have to say, if you take the hype of Deion Sanders out of it, you take the Shador out of it, like all the hype that was put around with this team, and we're taking all these pieces, we're working the transfer portal, and we got Lambos up front. You would say that whoever took over that job, if they didn't have a name or face to him, would be, solid first season. We went from 1 wins to 4, and now we have a building block for the next season. Like, we've got a pool of athletes that are coming back that we can build with, because we had nothing. We inserted stuff that we had no proven track record in our system of being there, and now we've built something. So for me, with Colorado, they have this demeanor with them of we're looking at them like an Ole Miss, of someone that we think they should be a 9-win team or a 10-win team because of all this hype that we have with them. But if we're going off of what we basically expect of if a good head coach gets dropped into a piss poor team, they're honestly just right on track. It's just the hype of Deion Sanders that I think has all this negativity around him. So for me, I'm just excited to watch them in a new conference in the Big 12, see the development of Shador Sanders. Is he gonna, is he still gonna hold on to the ball a little bit too long? Is his offensive line not gonna be wide open to where someone could drive a truck through it? That's going to be interesting to watch as well. The development of the defense as well, seeing if Travis Hunter is going to play both ways as well too. They've got some new talent. They've got a new running back because their previous running back that was a star went to Kansas State. A lot of different matchups we'll get to see.
They beefed up their O-line too.
Yeah, well, I mean, they pretty much cleared out their previous O-line because they were terrible, rightfully so. I mean, they literally broke the record. I mean, like Shador Sanders was the most sacked quarterback last season. So now part of that is he was holding on to the ball a little bit too long in some scenarios, but if you're constantly under attack, that breeds you holding on to the football. So,
So I'm kind of changing subjects here, but I'm kind of staying on the same subject of conference realignment. What I'm really curious to see is really what we're looking at moving forward. In terms of the 12-team playoff, like I was saying, in regards to, if you have 1 or 2 losses in the ACC or the Big 12, is that going to be considered the same as a 2-loss, SEC school or a 2-loss Big 10 school? And I can see where, let's say, Clemson finishes this season with 3 losses and, they're right on the edge of making that 12. Right. If Clemson feels like they were robbed in any way, I mean, do you think they might be wanting to push towards a Big 10 or an SEC or something like that? A conference where those losses having more losses isn't going to necessarily hurt you as much. That's really what I'm curious to see, because we've already seen where Florida State is wanting out of the ACC, and we're already seeing, hearing the rumors of some of these other schools looking at joining other conferences. I could easily see, frankly, I think the Big 12 is in a much better spot than the ACC. at least in terms of depth. I could easily see where a Clemson and a Florida State would want to, or even like a Miami or a UNC would want to move to the Big 12 and at least solidify that conference a little bit more. Because that's one thing I really see in the Big 12 right now is there's not necessarily just a top dog in that conference, and
any team could win that sucker any year.
I could
except
easily
UCF and Houston.
I don't know. Hey, Houston's
roster is depleted. It's in shambles.
It is.
Houston does not have a shot.
You've seen it in the. Houston is a weird example where you're in one of the best recruiting spots in all of the world when it comes to high school football recruiting. I mean,
NIL too.
Literally.
Yeah, I'm just talking this year. I'm just talking this year, like Houston,
which is fine.
Now that they're finally
we're
in the Big 12, fantastic. I'm just saying
we're
year.
talking in general though.
I mean, you saw Houston with like Case Keenum in the American Conference. I mean, that dude was setting records like nobody's business. And now, like, their big gripe with U of H was, oh, well, it's in the American Conference. They're doing it against East Carolina and Southern Miss. Well, now they're doing it against TCU and Colorado and Utah. So, again.
And it's an advantage to them of, hey, like, now they can go recruit as, hey, we're a Power 4 conference team, right? Yeah. Like, we're in the big dance. Like with us, you have a potential to go to the championship if we recruit well, right? So,
yep. And I believe,
like I said, like many things with this whole deal, this whole season, like go back to the College Football 25 video game, going back to the 12-team playoff, going back to getting Cincinnati and U of H into a Power 4 or Power 5 conference. These are all like 10 years overdue.
That's don't forget too with schools like that, like you said, like, hey, we're in the Big 12, like. We're in a Power 4 conference. We can get to the championship. Not only that, as a recruiting pitch, NIL money goes up. Your televised games go up. National televised games that people what would you rather want to watch? A freaking American Conference game or a Big 12 game?
I would rather watch a middle school football game.
Exactly, a Big 12 matchup or a American Conference matchup.
Yeah.
Like, it's night and day. So whenever you see these schools hop to that level, sure, the first year or two, it's going to be tougher. You're going to see them probably towards the bottom unless you're Oregon. Then you're, who knows what. But you see these schools going into these things. It's like a buffering time period. Give them a year or two so that they can get those new recruits in. Like, hey, like Houston, hey, we're in the Big 12 now. We got the NIL money. We're one of the biggest markets in the country. Like, why not come here? UCF, we're in Cincinnati. Like, UCF can be like, hey, we're in Florida. Where are they? Orlando? I think Orlando. Dude, we got Disney World down the street. You want to go to Disney World? You want to get an NIL deal to go to Disney World for free? Like, and then KJ Jefferson, the transfer from Arkansas. He's not a bad quarterback. He was getting beat up by Arkansas, practically, by their O-line just letting everyone in. But I would say for a quarterback, he's a pretty good quarterback. He's solid. He put up numbers in the SEC.
Not as good at rushing numbers as you would have thought. Someone of his caliber
would.
But like he still is a threat. You got to respect him.
And you know who his coach is too. Gus Malzahn has a thing with running quarterbacks. Just saying.
So, well, that's the thing with him in particular. I don't want to get too deep, but with KJ Jefferson, it's weird because, like, someone of his caliber of athleticism and strength in regards to a running QB, you would think would have more in the rushing numbers that he actually has had in his time with Arkansas. It's weird, like, but like I said, he's a threat.
But if your O-line's also not giving you time to get out of the pocket and you're immediately freaking getting sacked, of course your numbers are going to be down because you can't do anything.
Yes. You have to think
it's a fair point.
You have to think about the competition as well. You're going up and trying to do that against,
Bama,
first round draft picks.
Yeah.
Georgia, literally their entire defensive line got drafted, I believe, like 2 years ago. So,
yeah. So it's give or take, but you see all these teams are already making that first step of getting those initial recruits in. Like, again, UCF, because I know, Cole, you said UCF and Houston won't win it. It's like, but you're seeing them laying the foundation, getting that big-time recruit who said he was going to go to the draft, and probably would have gone undrafted, maybe. Or maybe would have been a 7th-round pick. Who knows? Yeah. But, like, you see them starting to lay the foundations and give them like 5 years. They're going to be in that mix with the Baylors, the TCUs, the Colorados, the whoever's of that conference. And I think having a balanced conference like that, everyone wins. Great games. You don't have the expected Alabamas, Georgias, or Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, like TCU. Went all the way to the playoffs. Who had them going to the playoffs that year? I would bank
go
on
to the championship.
Not a lot of
beating Michigan to get there.
Yeah, I bet you.
That's because Michigan is a terrible football team, but that's a whole.
Not last year they weren't.
Not last year.
Yeah, when you cheat, that certainly helps your chances of.
But anyway,
I gotta say the disguises were hilarious when I saw pictures of them. Like that's just. Gorgeous. You got to tip your cap at that point. I mean, my goodness.
But you see balanced conferences, and I almost think these lower ranked teams in these bigger conferences, like your Rutgers or your Indiana, could benefit from going to a conference. Vanderbilt could benefit going to a conference like the ACC or the Big 12. I'm not saying like those two conferences specifically, but like you can level it out because they're probably getting SEC talent that you just don't know about because they're getting buried by all these bigger time schools. While they get a chance to play more level competition, which makes all these teams around them better, because I mean, shoot, I know there's storied programs, but you have Michigan and Ohio State, they're just battling. It's like iron sharpening iron. It's like you have these teams battling out with high-ranked competition year after year. Of course, they're going to be better than the Rutgers who aren't playing top-flight competition all the time or the best teams year after year, So you can benefit there, and then hopefully, ideally, I know this will never happen. If that conference realignment does happen, then you start seeing the ACC and the Big 12 start leveling up more. So you won't get as much Alabamas or Michigans, Ohio States,
Blue Bloods.
Exactly. So it could be more level. But obviously it will never happen. Or even like a relegation system. I saw somewhere where it's like your lower ranked teams in these Power 4 conferences would get relegated while the conference champion.
you can jump conferences.
Exactly. I think that's a perfect idea. Like it keeps the level of competition up. It's like if you play good, you get rewarded good. You get all the big Power 4 money. You get all the big Power 4 recognition. You get all these fundings for your buildings and your stadiums and all this stuff because you're playing well. Not just some slouch. It gives teams like Tulane an opportunity to get in these Power 4 conferences, even if it's like the ACC, to compete and still go up, like a tier system or regulate, or you get my point.
Relegation.
Thank you. Like that could be a good idea too. Again, never happened. Like
it's all in the future.
Soccer,
possibly.
Like
Premier
soccer
leagues.
in Europe. It's like you see how competitive those teams are. I mean, obviously, when you have that generational talent like Messi or Ronaldo, when Ronaldo was with Real Madrid, not to get off topic off college football, of course, they're going to be in the conversation year after year, but you never, and I could be wrong, I'm not a soccer guy, but you don't hear year after year, oh, Real Madrid won it again and again and again and again and again. But primarily after those players left, they went downhill. So they're not in that conversation. It's more of the player driven rather than like this story of the team, I guess. I don't know. So
yeah.
All right. I think it's time. New segment.
Yeah. All right. It's time for a new segment, guys. One that we've never done before, but has been given much thought. And that is buy, sell, steal. Now, we got to explain this to especially our audience so that way it makes sense. So essentially, all of us are going to go around and we're going to give a team that we're buying into, a team that we're kind of, if we bought stock in it, we're selling it, and a team that is basically a dark horse, if you think, like basically really low buy-in price, not a lot of weight in this team. No one's expecting them to do good, but you think they could sneak in and have a great season, be in anywhere. I mean, a steal could be, hey, someone goes from a 2-win team to an 8-win team, or someone goes from, outside of a 6-win team to, hey, they're sneaking in the playoff, or they're knocking on the door of a conference championship, just whatever's unexpected. So for me, I'll just go ahead and start off.
So hold up, wait. Can I ask? Let's kind of set the structure. Are we going to go? All of us will say our buy team, or are we just going to go all three?
I'll tell you what. Let's do everyone say their buy first. Say their buy,
right,
and then we'll go sell. Then we'll go steal. Great thinking, Bert. That's much more organized. So my first buy, and I will say all three of my teams are going to be Big 12, just because I did a lot of research on that. Not a lot of coverage in regards to, I think, our preview show going into this that I first saw regarding the Big 12. I think there's a lot of variability there. That's just the most like guessing game per se. But my buy is going to be Utah. I think Utah has the best chance on paper to win the Big 12. You talk about them being a team that was able to completely bully teams like USC over there and be able to run the football down their throat. And now they get their star quarterback back in Cam Rising. I think their ground and pound mentality is going to help them completely be able to consistently keep their defense fresh against pretty much everybody except Kansas State. I think Kansas State is going to be their biggest challenge, because Kansas State can play smash mouth football and can play decent defense when they need to. But I think everyone else is going to be your typical Big 12 defense that is not going to be strong against the run. The only other team I can see them giving them a run for their money, just on paper, like just going face value, is going to be someone like an Oklahoma State. But yeah, we'll talk about them later. So that's my buy-in. Bert, what you got?
All right, gentlemen. When you go to Texas A&M, what do? You drink.
You become an engineer, slave for hours, get a degree, and then maybe get a job.
You drink the Kool-Aid. You learn your little. You learn your little. Why can't I think of the term right now? You drink your little.
Your yells.
You learn your little cult yells, and then when somebody questions, hey, A&M is a cult. You say it's not a cult. It's a tradition. It's a tradition.
Okay, fair.
When you go to Mississippi State, what do? You ring your cowbell until everybody within a 1.5-mile radius has bleeding ears.
I would like to say both of those schools put the cult in culture.
Hey, I didn't interrupt you. I did not interrupt you.
I'm just making a joke. We put the Colton culture, baby. We put the Colton culture.
Let me finish.
Great. It's beautiful.
Let me finish.
Okay.
When you go to Mississippi State, you ring your cowbell and until everybody within a 1.5-mile radius has bleeding ears. And when somebody comes up and tells you it's annoying, guess what you say? It's not annoying. It's a tradition.
Yep.
When you go to Penn State, what do? You touch little boys in the shower, and you go 10-2. That's what you do. That's what you do at Penn State. So, anyway. All right. Hey. Look, okay?
Oh my
Look,
God.
all I'm saying is this. The 12-team playoff was made for Penn State. It was literally made for them. I think, since 2014, when the 4 teams got introduced, if it had been 12 teams instead of 4, Penn State would have made it every single year. I don't think that there's any reason to doubt that Penn State is going to have a really good season. I think, there's an argument to be made that, Oregon and Washington are now in the conference, and that provides more competition, more so than, Ohio State and Michigan. But Penn State can still recruit very well. They've had tons of talent come out of there. Michael Parsons is a good example. Saquon Barkley. there's no reason why, when we had this conversation of who are the top 12 teams come December, Penn State should be among them. So I think Penn State's a good buy.
I missed about 70% of what you said.
That's fine. Listen to it later.
The audience heard it. Fair point. I have no words. Thomas. I literally was like, he's not gonna. Oh my word, he did. Okay, all right, Thomas. I don't know if you're gonna top that, but what's your buy-in?
Well, I'm not gonna top that, but yeah, I would say probably. Oh, man, this is hard because the big swinging to the Big Ten, dude. There's a lot of good teams that you could be buying. I'm so split. But I would probably have to say the first year guys who just absolutely just like to throw the football and put up points on a scoreboard and go with Oregon.
Okay. I thought that's where you're going.
As much as it pains me so much to say it because the number one receiver for Texas A&M ended up transferring over there. I just think they have one of the best QBs in the country in Dylan Gabriel. They're really good offensively. I think there's a reason why they're at the top of the Pac-12 for so long. I don't think it's going to change. I don't think it's going to be any different than it was last year. I think they're going to be exposing a lot of the Big Ten defenses more than people realize and turn it into more of a shootout that a lot of the Big Ten teams can't keep up with because a lot of them are, smash mouth football, running the ball downhill 50 million times a game, like your Michigans and whatnot. But I do think Oregon's offense is going to be so high-powered, it's going to absolutely toss up all these defenses to turn into shootouts, which ultimately Oregon will end up winning more than likely than not. So that's my buy team.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah. Let's get into sells. So for me, like I said, this is just how it worked out. That's because I just felt there was the most variability here. My sell is going to be Oklahoma State because I think the Big 12 championship is going to be between Kansas State and Utah. And I think Oklahoma State is going to do exactly what Mike Gundy's Oklahoma State teams have been doing for really a better part of the last decade, to where they're always relevant. They're always a player, but they're not going to make it all the way to the playoff and make the big dance. They're going to be the third best team and always knocking on the door, or they're the second best team and lose the conference championship. I don't see them upholding their current stock value, even though they have the best running back in the country, some would say. So I would say I would sell that, in my opinion. Bert, what you got?
So I think there's a definition team when it comes to selling this year, and I think that's going to be the LSU Tigers.
I thought he was going to say us.
No, you guys are always sell. I'm kidding. I think A&M.
We're not.
But regardless, I think it's LSU. You look at that defense from last year, and it was god awful. The only reason that team had any production at all was on the offensive side of the ball. And not only that, like Harold Perkins, man, like I have never seen somebody misplaced as much as he has been. Not last season, but the season beforehand, they had him as a true edge, and he absolutely dominated in a conference where big offensive linemen are supposed to be running the conference. And last year they moved him to more of a outside linebacker position.
But he was playing Mike. He was playing middle.
No, he's playing Mike.
Middle in a 4-2-5.
No, they moved him to Mike this year.
Oh no, I thought. Sorry, I thought you were talking about this year. I misheard you. No, this year they have him as a true Mike.
So last year they had him as an outside linebacker, not a true edge, and now they're moving him to middle linebacker, a true Mike. Just so misused. I don't know who the DC is at LSU, but I mean, come on, get your shit together. Excuse my French, but seriously. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, how much production can you lose? You lose Jaden Daniels, who's the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, and then you lose Malik Neighbors and
Brian Thomas.
You lose 3 first-round draft picks.
I think they still have a strong wide receiver core, but it's not enough to carry, I don't think.
There's so much production lost, and that schedule in the SEC is so dead-gum tough. I don't care who you are. Mm-hmm. Certainly some teams have it easier than others, which I'll touch on later. But, I mean, you are not going to see LSU have the same success that they had last season. So, seriously, sell high on them.
Yep, exactly.
So, for me, in the Big Ten, I'm going to be selling on the USC Trojans. I was looking at some polls. They have them as like the 7th ranked team, I guess. But, after the first 4 or 5 typical, Big Ten teams, it's kind of like who else? I think the reason why I'm picking them over some team like Michigan, who lost Harbaugh, McCarthy, Corum, et cetera,
Stallions,
is that they're a very deep team. They were a very deep team to begin with. I just think it's another year that they developed. And I believe that the guy they hired is an internal guy. So it's not someone who's coming in, bringing a whole new system that's foreign to everyone and whatnot, but has a similar feeling that people can get behind.
At least the new head coach had to have had a better first press conference than the UCLA head coach. That guy was. I don't even know who his name is. I just know he had a terrible presser that got memed and everything. My goodness, it was bad. I don't know what to think about the UCLA team where they're headed.
Who cares about UCLA anymore? Let's be honest. But
yeah,
USC, they have Lincoln Riley. Oh, the savior of USC. No, they're so kind of the same. I feel like the Pac-12 was notorious for having horrible defense but insane offense, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think this is the case for USC. I think they're going to be a big bunch of frauds, huge fraud alert, thinking that they can throw up all these points and whatnot. You lost your best player, Caleb Williams. I mean, who else do they?
Brendan Rice, they lost.
So you go into a conference where I know I made the argument for Oregon, how their offense is going to be great and they're going to carve up all these defenses, not to take away from how good those defenses are, right? These Big Ten defenses are still, top of the notch, A1 steak sauce, if you will. But I feel like a team like Oregon can overcome that by how talented and how creative their offense is, while a team like USC, who can put up points, is going to struggle a lot. I just think the type of offense that you're going to be running in the Big Ten isn't going to fly. Not having the talent, let's say a Washington or an Oregon has, for example, especially Oregon. I just think they're going to tear up the Big Ten. But having a mid team who has a lot of hype going into that power conference, I'm just selling on them. I don't like them at all.
I'm really curious. I'm really curious to see how USC adjusts to teams like Iowa and Illinois. Mm-hmm. That everything with them is between the tackles, just power football. I'm really curious to see if USC
Wisconsin
can match.
There too.
Yeah, another great example. I'm really curious to see if they can compete physically with those teams.
Yeah, it's going to be tough because a lot of these Pac-12 teams are great offensive teams, but are horrible defensive teams. Again, you have your outliers who aren't as bad defensively, like Oregon per se, but like these teams who are throwing up 45, 50, 55 points a game isn't going to happen. I mean, first off, they're not throwing that many points on the board because, like Bert, like you said, these Big Ten teams are just smash mouth between the tackles, just running the ball, which chews up clock. Whether it's from the first couple minutes of the first quarter to the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter, it's still draining clock. Where you see a lot of these lower scoring games, unless you have Michigan and Ohio State or the Big Four, really, but with these other teams that they're going to be playing a lot who have great defenses and just smash mouth football, I think they're really going to struggle against because they're taking away like Iowa, for example. Cooper DeJean, one of the best corners in college football, played for Iowa. That Iowa team was shutting teams down through the air. It's like whenever you're in – these teams don't per se have a great run game. To begin with, all they do is just throw the ball, whether it's like a creative trick play or check downs or screen passes, whatever. They're mostly throwing the ball. And if you take that away, what else do they really have?
Well, and the main thing that happens with that is when you're a team that throws the ball 65, 70% of the time, right? And it's not working. Even if you have a fantastic defense, if they're going back out there every 2.5 to 3 minutes, any great defense with that happening, I mean, by the second quarter, they will break down. They are going to be gassed. The other team's offense is going to have enough, basically time to figure out what they're doing and how to break through. And, the other thing.
But then you run into the fact of these teams. You're absolutely correct, but it's not like these teams are throwing the ball the same amount of times to where they're getting off the field quick. They're running the ball. So
that's what I'm saying that's the thing is the other team with them running the ball. So not only is their defense having to go out there more and with less rest time, right? Because their own offense is turning the ball over within 2.5 to 3 minutes because they're not running the ball. But they're also going up against a ground and pound exhausting offense to try to defend against.
But if you're going up against, I'll get to you. I'll let you.
We're agreeing here, brother. We're just hearing each other differently.
My point is that you're running on these teams that have horrible defenses. So it's not you're getting a 3 and out just running the ball. You're getting like 5, 6, 7 yards of carry.
Yeah,
where you're getting a first down. So it's giving time.
That's the thing. Yes,
it's giving time for your defense to rest. So it's less likely for them to gas out when they go back out again.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is for like a USC, a UCLA. It's the opposite. Your offense is going to be trying to air it out a bunch. They're going to turn the ball over back to the defense where your defense is going to be not rested. They're going to go against like an Iowa, which like an Iowa is the only team that could run a play action under 2 minutes, down 3, and actually fake out the coverage because it'd be that probable to still run the ball in that scenario.
I could easily see where USC or UCLA tries to develop a Mike Leach air raid type scheme where you're not necessarily passing the ball to score a touchdown, but more so you're passing the ball as more of a run game as well. Simply for the point of giving your defense a chance to rest and actually giving them a chance against, a power football team.
Yeah, no, I agree all around. So now here's the fun part. We're going to get into the steal segment, right? So who's our dark horses? Who do we think is that on paper should suck that is actually going to be good? For me, I'm going with Texas A&M. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to go with Kansas. I was initially going to say Colorado, but we already talked about them. I would say Kansas for the sole reason of if they keep Jalen Daniels alive, which is a tall task, but that team goes as far as Jalen Daniels stays healthy because that dude is talented. He's a great quarterback. He's a guy that could make that team overperform and possibly be a team that is like, hey, maybe we made the conference championship and lost. Maybe we stuck in there. Or maybe they're the third best team, but I don't think anyone has them being even the third best team this season. And I think with Jalen Daniels, they could go that far or more. That's just my opinion.
Landslide polls, baby. All right. So my team, I would say they're relatively high in regards to, where they finished last season in terms of buying in. But I still think they're a steal in the fact that they're not getting a whole lot of thought. So this team, they play in the SEC. They finished last year 11-2. Okay. I just want to name their schedule real quick. It's not necessarily who's on their schedule, but who's not on their schedule. So they're going to start with Murray State. They play Buffalo, Boston College, Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, UMass, Auburn, Alabama, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Mississippi State, and Arkansas. Georgia is not on that schedule. Texas is not on that schedule. Tennessee is not on that schedule. LSU is not on that schedule. This is the Missouri Tigers, right?
Yeah, Mizzou. Yep.
They return 70% of their production from last year.
Yep.
They're the only team in the SEC that is ahead of that is Texas A&M. But
for once, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Good
with
God.
With the coaching change.
Hey, let me go. Let me go.
Yep.
Okay.
Go. Have your shining moments.
So look, all I'm going to say is I look at this schedule and I see that Alabama game is going to be tough. I think it's in Tuscaloosa as well. A&M I think is going to be tough. It's in College Station. And Oklahoma's another team, I think that one's in Columbia. So I like your chances with that better. But all these other games I think are very much winnable for that team. So you look at the schedule, you should have 10 wins, right? You should have 10 wins. Hope if you can find a way to get a win against either Alabama, who is in a first-year head coach. We don't really know how DeBoer is going to work out there. The talent's there. I'm not sure if they're going to have, some hiccups with that transition. A&M is the same way, right? They still have a lot of talent coming back, but you're still going through a whole new coaching, first-year head coach. I think you should be able to try to find at least 2 wins of those 3 games. At least you should be able to get 1. But, you're looking at a 10-2 season with the 12-team playoff. With the 12-team playoff, a SEC school that has 10 wins and 2 losses should be in the playoff. There's no question about it. So everybody is just saying, Missouri, they're a typical SEC school. We haven't seen a whole lot of schools beyond Alabama and Georgia go on to have multiple years of success in succession. I think this might be a case where you actually see that happen. Again, I think they're not getting as much hype as they should be getting. I think they're a good buy for this upcoming season.
Or a steal, rather. But yes.
Steal, yes. Sorry.
New segment, guys. New segment. We're getting it.
Hey, we're still learning the ropes, man. But
oh boy! All right, definitely. Thomas, what you got?
Yeah.
So for me, I'm split on this one in the Big Ten. So I'm gonna be a little rule breaker over here. I'm gonna give 2 teams because I think they're evenly matched.
It's the first time we're already breaking the rules.
I have to.
Dadgummit.
I have Iowa and Nebraska. Nebraska. Because when you think about it, so let me give my reasoning for Iowa. It's a little more straightforward. Yeah. Obviously, we know their defense notorious of being good year after year. They got a new OC who's supposed to ramp up the productivity for their offense, and that's their only weak spot. So there's your reasoning for that.
Yeah, outside of that, their punting is fantastic.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
So
best punter in the league.
Yeah. And for Nebraska, you see they have Dylan Raiola. I know he's not the end-all, be-all, but to flip the number 1 or number 2 quarterback in the country from Georgia to play for that program, he's going to stay there for a couple of years because of the eligibility requirements for the NFL. What are they going to – from what I'm hearing, he's going to be one of those guys that comes in as a true freshman, starts, and just has magic. So whenever you get that settled and have a player like that who's going to elevate everyone around them, also having – because I know Matt Rule likes to take his sweet little time in building programs. I mean, he's been there for the last couple of years. I mean, he's been recruiting. He's been getting all these guys, been keeping a lot of these guys. So you have your experience and whatnot. So I think Iowa's more likely to be a dark horse, but for more of a dark horse feeling, I think Nebraska could be someone that – and they have an easy schedule too. You know, they're not playing anyone particularly good. So you can see them in the conference championship if they are – half decent. So that's my squads for the dark horse.
Okay. I would say Iowa is your true steal. I don't see Nebraska doing anything, in my opinion. I haven't seen anything from them that excites me.
I like Matt Rule. I think it was a good hire for them, but Iowa, I think Iowa's more of a sure thing. Didn't Iowa finish I think they were in the conference championship game last year, weren't they?
I believe so.
I think so, yeah.
Hey, I was given 2 perspectives.
That's
Hail
fine.
Mary, Hail Mary and a more reason. I can't be like, this is the Big Ten. I had to at least go some unrealistic.
Hey,
dark horse.
Rules are meant to be broken. That's what I say.
And if Nebraska makes the conference championship, y'all are going to get a call from me saying, I told you so. And Raiola is going to be the Heisman winner or runner-up. That's not a projection. I'm just saying, if he is and becomes Johnny 2.0, Cole, you know something about Johnny Manziel. Both of us do because homie's an Aggie.
I know way too much about Johnny Manziel.
So, if he has a Heisman-type season, best believe, and they make the conference championship, I'm going to tell both of you guys I told you so.
Okay, so we're not going to make a projection, in which case, if it went bad, you would be held accountable. But we're going to say we're not projecting it, but if it happens, I'm going to say I told you so. So you got to make a projection. You got to put yourself on the line.
Hey,
but here's the thing. I did say they were a dark horse. I never said that they were going to win anything. But y'all saying, that's
the whole point. Segment people. If it's a steal, you're saying they are going to be good. But okay, whatever. You know what? It's first time's trial run. You know what? We're moving forward. Okay, onward and upward. Okay, we tried. Okay, we can't have nice things, but we got 90% there. Good job, boys. New segment. Okay, we did it. And Bert, you burnt down the house with your buy. I don't know what I'm going to do with that.
All I'm going to say is I'm really mad Carson isn't here because I specifically had him in mind when I was thinking about all that.
Money. I would have paid money for him to be here because I bet you Penn State would have been his buy just out of just bias. But I would have paid money. Shout out Karsten.
Well, all I'm going to say is if that doesn't end up as a clip, what are we here for?
What are we doing? Yeah,
I will say Bert's extra dark horse is Texas A&M because Mike Elko is that guy. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. That's me and Cole's thing. Luckily, Bert had the SEC, so it's okay.
All right. Well, speaking of which, let's go. Let's finish this off by going conference by conference and just discussing who we think could win it, who are some standouts we want to talk about. Kind of just expanding just a little bit before we close it out. Let's start with the quicker ones, and then we'll finish with the SEC because there's just a lot to unpack there. Let's start off with the Big 12. Okay, full list of Big 12 teams. You got Arizona, Arizona State, Baylor, BYU, UCF, Cincinnati, Colorado, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas Tech, Utah, and West Virginia.
Kansas State.
Watch out for Arizona. They had a really good season last year. I know they lost their coach, but they got hot really close to the end of the year. So there might be a dark horse.
I like Kansas State or Kansas. I actually like Kansas a lot more than
Kansas State.
Because Kansas State's big thing was their offense, and they had like the worst talent, I guess, in the conference, but had one of the best offenses in the conference. The guy who made that whole offense tick is gone now for Aggieland. So I don't think it's going to be a huge drop off, obviously, because I think his name was Avery Bradshaw. Is that the quarterback?
That sounds familiar. Yeah,
something like that. I think he's going to be good. He's really good on the feet. I think he can open up that offense. So I don't think it's going to be a huge drop off, but it's definitely going to be noticeable to where Kansas retained a lot more of their guys. To where it's going to, I think I like that better.
I agree. I think the wildest. Yeah.
Utah.
That's my pick to win it.
Cam Rising is on his 20th season of college football. Utah.
Yeah, they're going to retire his Walker after this season if he throws for 1,000.
Freaking Cam Rising versus that Oklahoma State quarterback on his 7th year, bro. I don't even remember.
That's going to be insane. I mean, and we thought Bo Nix had a long run.
Dude.
I would say the team that's like going to be the biggest wild card is I do think it's Colorado, because they're a team that could easily have another 4-win season and get all the hate in the world and be made fun of and everything for all the hype that they got. Or they're a team that with their star power that they've got and really their skill talent, and if they've done anything to help on defense, especially with their front seven, then that's going to be great. And if they've done
it's another year in the Big 12 too.
Exactly. And they're not going to have to run through a lot of the super high octane offenses they saw in the Pac-12 when they had Caleb Williams and some other guys. Mm-hmm. They're still going to have to deal with Utah. That was a tough one for them.
But I think they can win 7-8 games this year.
I think they'll make a bowl game. I think at a minimum they make a bowl game. And like I said, if they've done anything with that offensive line, and honestly, their offensive system, if they get like a Colin Klein treatment for Texas A&M's offense, where we're hoping that essentially not only is our offensive line better, but we're getting rid of the ball quicker, thereby protecting our QB even more. We're making better decisions. We have more check down options. That's also going to keep us off our feet. But I mean, we're looking at Colorado's schedule, right? When we're looking at North Dakota State to start, that's going to be a win for them. Colorado, let's see. Yeah, Colorado, Nebraska, game 2. That's going to be interesting. But I think they win that one.
I think they do too.
Then you got the Colorado State matchup. I think it's a rivalry game. I think it'll be close once again because Colorado State actually retained a good amount of their roster.
I don't think it would be as close. I don't think it's going to an overtime.
Oh no, no. But I think it will be close. I think it'll be like a 10-point game max.
There you go. That's better.
So and then you go on to Colorado and Baylor. That one I think is a toss-up. I don't really know what to do there because Baylor could improve, but they could also still be a flat spot on offense. I don't even know. And then you have Colorado UCF. I think they win that one. The Kansas State, I think that's a loss for them, in my opinion. I think they're going to get rolled there. I think that they could beat Arizona. That's another toss-up for me because we don't really know what we're going to see out of them. Cincinnati, I think they got that one because didn't Cincinnati have a horrible coaching hire there, I believe? The Larry guy or whatever it was that like nobody wanted and was so shocked that they hired. I'll Google that later. But if I remember correctly, Cincinnati has a terrible head coach, if I remember correctly. Texas Tech, I got them winning that one too. Utah, I think they get steamrolled there. Kansas, they could lose there if Jalen Daniels is healthy. And then Oklahoma State, that one, like I said, I personally pick Oklahoma State to be a flop, but I think they would still beat them. I
don't know. Ollie Gordon can run.
That's what I'm saying. I think I misphrased it. I think Oklahoma State would beat them currently, but we'll see what happens. But I think out of that, I counted out at least 7 or 8 wins there. I think I have them losing to Kansas State. I've got them losing for sure to Utah and Kansas, Oklahoma State. That's 4 losses. I think that
8-4 is still an improvement from 4-8. So
that's double their wins, right? I mean, an 8-win season for Colorado. I think that's mission accomplished. I mean,
don't be shocked if they get in the playoff if they win 8 games.
No. Good God. But I think their minimum to not. I mean, and I think they would still get made fun of is if they go 6-6 and just barely make a bowl game.
Yeah,
but
I don't.
I think the minimum they could do if they have their head screwed on straight and don't like have a game like they did with Stanford last year is get 7 wins. But at the same time, if they went off and got 8 or 9 wins, I wouldn't necessarily be too shocked. That's the toxic thing about having Deion Sanders as your head coach and the star power of Travis Hunter, Shadur Sanders. They've got a whole bunch of skill players there as well. They got another offensive stud that they got in the transfer portal. That's the thing is if they get 8 or 9 wins, it's not necessarily anything like it'll be talked about for sure, but it wouldn't have the same kind of shocking factor as if you saw like a Houston come in and do that, right? Even though like the programs were in a similar state 2 years ago, they were both terrible rosters and needed a redo. So,
how much NIL is Coach Prime paying you, Cole?
Well, like I said, I'm going to be biased because I liked them before Prime came over there because my cousin played there back all the way up until 2005 and holds the receiving record over there for touchdowns in a single season, and I think touchdowns for a tight end all time. But like I said, I like Colorado for the record. I think I said this on the show before. I like Colorado even when they were still a freaking 2-win team and Deion Sanders was nowhere near that program. I'm just excited that they have gotten back into relevancy since my cousin actually left over since 2005. They really have not been anything worth a crap since. So, but I am not a Deion hype.
Let's speed it up. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, Big 12. I think it's the most all over the place. But Big 10, what are we thinking here, guys? Let's
Wisconsin.
go.
Watch out.
Since this has conference alignment here, let's lift off the full
Oregon
real quick.
Again, I gave my reason why along.
Let me get the full list off here. All right,
I think it's going to be one of the. I think it's going to be one of those top 5 teams.
It's going to be a blue-blooded team. Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, Washington. Those are your top teams.
The full team list here. We got Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Maryland, Michigan State, Minnesota, Nebraska, Northwestern, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Purdue, Rutgers, UCLA, USC, Washington, and Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think we're the one of the top 5. Oregon.
They're going to be the ones to win it. The question is going to be, who might be on the outside looking in. And Wisconsin, I think, is one of those teams. It wouldn't surprise me. They play Alabama like week 1. That's a big time game. If
they beat Bama, that would be huge for them in the conference, long story short.
And for the SEC for that matter. But anyway, blue blood, chalk.
So that was easy.
Do we think Michigan is tanking or what?
No.
I think
they're deep. No? They're deep. They have the talent.
I'll be honest. I think Ohio State this year is a little bit better suited to win that matchup. But Michigan's a blue-blooded program. They're still going to be able to recruit. They're still going to be able to perform at a high level. I just don't know if it's going to be on the same levels last year.
If they have somewhat of the same system as Harbaugh did of running football, they have their best running back.
Yeah.
And Donovan Edwards. So and they have their O-line back. So it's not like they're losing anything big, Who was the Michigan receiver who came out this past year? I know McCarthy came out.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Oh man, his name is like I'm like literally seeing the back of his jersey and I'm just missing the name. I think he went in the first round. I don't know. I could be completely wrong, but
can't help you.
I think we're all on the same page here. I think.
Yeah. And Corum,
I think everyone favors Ohio State.
Corum's the only one that left, but Donovan Edwards, for Pete's sake, is on the front of NCAA 25, so he has to be somewhat good, So,
okay, so who would get the Big Ten? Who gets the Big Ten Player of the Year, and why is it Iowa's punter?
No, it's.
I think it's probably going to be Dylan Gabriel, if I want to be honest.
Ohio State quarterback, best player on the best team, or quarterback on the best team.
He can't even say his name.
Well, it just goes to legacy of the school, right? I mean,
yeah.
Now, as far as Ohio State quarterbacks in the NFL, there hasn't been a lot of good ones that translated until C.J. Stroud. So
exactly, that's all that matters.
Hey, that's a whole different episode.
Yeah, that's all that matters.
Exactly.
ACC. ACC.
All right, ACC. Let me get the ACC teams up.
I think Clemson. I think I've been hearing good things about them, but it's kind of a toss-up because last year. But,
so I have a real interesting, perspective on the ACC.
Well, let me list everyone out real quick. Let me list everyone out. We got Boston because we have all the conference realignment and everything. So we got Boston, we got Cal, we got Clemson, Duke, Florida State,
Stanford.
Georgia Tech, Louisville, Miami, NC State, North Carolina, Pittsburgh, SMU. That's going to be fun to see what happens there. Stanford, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, and Wake Forest.
I don't think Florida State is going to be able to. I think they lost too much.
Well, they got DJ.
I agree.
Yeah, but there's a reason why he's on his third school.
Yeah. No, miss me with him.
So I think it's really going to come down to Clemson, and then I think I've been hearing a lot of hype about Miami. Every single year, it seems like they're like one of those teams that it's like, are they going to do it? Are they not?
Or Duke. Duke could be. No. I know they lost Elko.
No,
but no. I don't know. They got Murphy from Texas, and as much he's not there anymore.
They lost Riley Leonard.
Duke is going to be.
I would say Miami is the biggest wild card here because Miami is similar to that of a Texas A&M, in which every year they have what looks like a good roster, and there's some sort of injuries or terrible mismanagement or just a heartbreaking loss that takes them out of any kind of running for a conference championship play. The list of excuses from both their head coaches and their fan base are very long, much like that of Texas A&M, and I can say that as a proud Aggie. And it's really like a Cowboys-itis kind of disease of where every year on paper should be your year, and every year is your year, and it's so magical how they could find a way to screw it up. But with Miami, I mean, like I said, you're still forced to every year go, hey, but they're a player. Even if they had 4 wins last season, you're like, but it's Miami, right? It's Miami. Great recruiting. Every year you can just get a bunch of guys in the transfer portal or just in the recruiting classes. Be like, do you want to come over here and ball out? We'll get the mouse to pay you, right? We'll get freaking Mickey Mouse out here. We're gonna give you.
That's UCF, dog. That's UCF.
I know it's Orlando, but still, the mouse is in play. If you're in Florida, the mouse is in play, and we're gonna get you for shoreline property, whatever. We'll get you in a freaking villa if we got to. Like, who cares? It's Miami, right? They've got an advantage every year, and that's the weird thing with these guys is, and they have, some years they just come out of nowhere too. So I don't know what to think about them. I think they're kind of like the Colorado of the ACC, to where if they have a terrible year and have 4 wins, they're like, I could see that coming. And if they have a good year and have 8 to 9 wins, like, yeah, that makes sense. It's Miami, and the next year it's like, well, are they going to the playoff? But I think their peak is having a 10-win season. I don't see them making it into the playoff or the conference championship here. Or I think their absolute peak is making the conference championship and losing to Clemson.
I could see how the only team that they lose to is Clemson, and whether they make the playoffs or not, I think with what would it be like 2 losses, you lose the game, and then your conference championship. I don't know. That could be one of those teams that kind of sneaks in right at 11 or 12.
I think my biggest thing is they're one of those teams that on paper should do exactly what you're talking about, but is most susceptible to drop a game to a freaking Virginia Tech or Georgia Tech.
It's the same story every year,
and they'll take themselves out of the running for the conference championship.
They're stacked. It's the same story every single year with that team. It's like on paper they're the best. Are they going to do it on the field? Who knows, right?
Well, with Miami, it's not even on paper. Are they the best? That's Clemson every year. That's been the way it is, and then Miami is just like always just like the.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
The Ferrari. It's like, oh, well, it's Miami, so like they could be super good, even if they're coming out of nowhere. Like, they're just weird. They're just weird, dude. They're just weird.
Team.
Well, let's look at the SEC now.
All right. Well, here comes.
Well, yep. All right.
it, as they say. I'll be on. Go ahead and announce them.
Yep. Like I said, we got a lot of realignment here. So for those that are under a rock,
it's just really two realignments here. It's freaking Texas and OU, and then everyone else is the same.
Yeah. Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, LSU, Mississippi State, Missouri, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Texas, and Vanderbilt.
I'll be honest. I could see where, like, aside from like 3 schools where like everybody thinks that they have a legitimate chance of making it this year, like legitimately, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and Mississippi. Let me finish.
He's trying to say people who don't have hope. Yeah,
I legitimately think it's Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and Mississippi State. Everybody else thinks that they can make the 12.
And it's realistic.
You broke up on my end a little bit. I didn't hear you quite clear.
Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt. Those are the only 3 schools that do not think they can make the 12.
Yeah. Everyone else has got steam coming out their ears, thinking they got a shot.
And here's the thing.
But I think there's a ton of teams that think they'll make the 12 and they'll drop a game to one of those teams. Like they'll drop a game to Mississippi State or Arkansas.
All these teams that can think they can make it is realistic, though, because that's how good the SEC is. You know,
I would say Oklahoma thinks it, but they're not. I think Oklahoma is in for a rude awakening. They were my second sell team.
Yeah,
that's fair.
I think they're in for a rude awakening.
I think one of the two will struggle majorly, and I think it's the one that has a horrible defense.
Well, like I said, I think Oklahoma's the only team in here. I think Oklahoma's the only team in here that could be averaging 28 or 31 points a game and wind up 6-6.
Because here's the thing, you run into the same situation as like USC in the Big Ten, right? You have a high power offense, but then you have like a good defense. Like, and this isn't Big Ten defense. This is SEC defense, where your whole entire defense could be projected in the first round in some form or fashion. I mean, shoot. And even the offense, like these Big Ten teams that can't keep up offensively for Oregon, almost every SEC team can put up points in some way. Besides, obviously, the 3 that Bert mentioned, every team can have that game where they just pop off because they have the talent for it. You know,
so I think there are levels in the SEC, like tiers, as the kids would say. I think like the top of the top, I think, is going to be your Texas and Georgia. I think in terms of talent, hype, I know, I'm sorry, I apologize. I think right below that tier, I mean, literally there's probably like 10 teams. I think you can throw Ole Miss in there. You can throw Tennessee in there. You could probably throw like a Missouri in there. Texas A&M you can throw in there. And I think there's a drop off again with like Florida, South Carolina's in that next tier. Who else? LSU. The SEC, I think, is very tiered, but like Thomas was saying, you know, aside from the 3 schools I mentioned, I mean, they're there.
Any given Saturday, literally any given Saturday.
And that's what's so tough about the conference. It's not the, and all of the coaches were saying this during the media days. It's not the Texas's, Georgia's, and this is what I think. I'm curious to see really how Texas and Oklahoma adjust, because it's not, oh, we have to go play Alabama at Tuscaloosa, or, oh, we got to go play Georgia at Georgia. It's, you got to go play at Georgia, and then the very next week you have Texas A&M coming into town, and then the week after that you have South Carolina.
The endurance part of it. It's literally going through the gauntlet, but that's every single team in the SECs. You're going through some sort of gauntlet.
Yeah, right? And that just comes down to also like how thick is your roster too, because I think also Oklahoma has some guys that can be explosive on both sides of the ball. I would really say more on the offensive side of the ball. But I think they're a team that when they have that one injury, of anyone who's having any meaningful production, they do not have someone that can replace it, even
Jackson
get 80% of their production.
For example.
Exactly. So, that's the other thing is in the Big 12 and the Pac-12, a lot of these teams, they're coming from the Big 12 over or the to the SEC or the Pac-12 to the Big 10. You're not going to be able to get away with being able to just focus on getting a couple of big names in the transfer portal, a couple of big, skill players in the in your recruiting, and then be able to piece together the O-line with some duct tape and be able to call it an offense, right? You're gonna lose some guys, right? I mean, look at freaking A&M, right? We have some of the best recruiting classes, and somehow for 3 years in a row, we're down to our second string quarterback by week 4, and last year we went down to our third string quarterback for the third year in a row, and then that wasn't even good enough. We had to go down to our fourth string quarterback by the second play of a bowl game.
That's because your offensive line sucks.
Yes, but we were not the only person that was dealing with crazy injuries like that, right? That's just how bad. That's as bad as it gets, right? That's as bad as it gets.
That's the conference.
But that's the SEC, right?
That's the conference.
That's how the conference works. That's exactly my point. Is someone like an Oklahoma can very much like other teams, like in Oklahoma or like a current Clemson in the ACC or Notre Dame in their entire existence, the last 2 decades, can get away with being a paper. I'm sorry, Notre Dame. I got something against them, but
here's the crazy part too.
They can get those guys could get away as being a paper tiger, and you can't necessarily do that in this conference. Go ahead.
Here's the crazy part too, and I know I'm going to sound like a homer a little bit on this, but like even school, like I'm going to toss out Vanderbilt, but like even schools like Arkansas and Mississippi State, the NIL is there. Going and playing in Starkville is very difficult. Going and playing in Fayetteville is very difficult. I could easily see a team like Tennessee or Ole Miss or Texas A&M going in and losing to one of those 2 schools just because of it because it's there's talent everywhere, everywhere, and depth everywhere. And
exactly.
Again, I really think I guess I'm going to try to put a bow on this conference for me. I think and it's really hard to do so. I think Texas and Georgia coming into the season are the favorites. But again, there are so many teams out there that I could see in the championship game and in the playoffs. And I mean, literally, name the
you can have 5 SEC teams in that playoff.
It would not surprise me at all if that's the exact case.
Yeah, and I think with Texas in particular, as much as it pains me to say it, I don't know if they're in the top 2. I think that question comes down to how the coaching change at Alabama works, because they still have a good roster. It's just does that work, right? I think Georgia will be up there for sure. And then does someone like a Mizzou or an Ole Miss actually creep into that second spot? But Texas will be in play for it. But I do think with their schedule, as much as it pains for me to say, I think the most likely situation is Texas will do well enough to where that last game of the season against Texas A&M will be Texas fighting for its bid to the college football playoff. And in that, the SEC championship game potentially. So I think they'll do well enough with how top-heavy they are with upperclassmen and returning starters and whatnot. You really can't make an argument at this point in time when there's been no pads hitting each other yet, right? And there's been we're coming up on week 1.
It'll sort itself out like it always does.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to come here week 2, and there's going to be stuff turning over. Vanderbilt's going to go on an 8-game run of losses. Sorry, I didn't want to. I didn't mean to scare you all there. But
look, there's a reason why. There's a reason why Vanderbilt's in the conference. It's an easy win.
Yeah, they are there to put some more diversity in win totals.
They make us look smarter. They make the conference look smarter.
They add the GPA. They're the GPA boosters,
and they're an easy win.
They are there so that when teams like an Ole Miss and Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Auburn, when they need one more win to make a bowl game, when they're having a bad season, Vanderbilt's right there for them.
Yep.
I said when they're having a bad season, not when they're doing great. I said when they're on their down year, and they need to make a bowl game. Vanderbilt's there for them.
The season is already going to be rough for me. Okay.
I basically gave you a compliment. I said when you're having a bad year, you could still be a 6-6 team. That's not an insult. Like A&M's bad year wasn't even 6 wins a couple years ago. I mean, good God. So
he's not wrong.
I was not trying to take a specific shot against any of those teams. I'm just saying on the years they have been bad, they can still be a 6-16 and go have a bowl game. Like in other conferences, they don't have that luxury, right? Like you're not doing anything. So, but trust me, I'll save my talking mess for the 1 week that we play you guys. But anywho,
if we make it there.
No, I mean, Bert, you're year round. Okay. I just reserve for the 1 week. You're year round. Okay. I'm aware. Okay. But yeah, so I will say a couple of things here. I think Florida, if we were to expand the buy, sell, steal, they're a big sell. Big sell. I don't think they're doing anything.
I don't know if you've looked at their schedule. I think they start the season off really well, and you have a coach that's in the hot seat, kind of back into a corner a little bit.
Yeah, but it's that exact coach. Why I think I think that dude has room
Florida
IQ. Okay, Florida, I don't think Florida's going anywhere.
Florida's always going to be able to recruit very well. Florida's a tough team. Again, it goes back to the conference to where who knows.
Okay, let me put this in a way that will be the best way I can say it to your perspective, Bert. Okay, I think that they will have a lot of single-digit losses, right, and play a lot of people close, right? But because of their room temperature IQ head coach, combined with just the dramatics of being a big-name team and having especially on the back half of their schedule, come November, you're going to see the correlation here. They're going to be a team that will be like a Texas A&M 5 years ago, especially under oh my gosh, before Jimbo. Why is he the swagger copter? Why is
Kevin Sumlin?
Thank you. I'm sorry. I guess my PTSD tried to delete that from my memory. They're going to be like a Kevin Sumlin to where they're hot for the first 5 games, and then come November, they're done. Right? They're just done. But they're going to play a lot of people close, give everybody, give their entire fan base a bunch of hemorrhages and mental disorders from having to watch all the dramatics, and they'll wind up still going to the Tax Slayer Bowl at a solid 7-5. That's how I see it playing out. That's how it was under a bunch of Kevin Sumlin's years when we were on our down year. And like I said, this is a team with, I think, a mediocre coach but a decent roster. So I think that's a 7-5 record as an SEC team. That's what you get when you have a decent roster but a very mediocre. And in this case, I think with Florida, a bad coach, in my opinion. So that's just my thoughts on Florida. But Thomas, I'll start with you, and then Bert, I want your answer. What do we think about Alabama here? Do we think the coaching fit is going to work, or do we think that we're going to have a down year and he's going to have to kind of build his own guys with his own system, or is this more of a reload?
I'm gonna just keep it very straightforward. I think if it's a 3-loss season, it's Alabama fans are getting their heads cut off. Basically, they're gonna say, "Oh, it's a horrible season. We suck," and then Kellen DeBoer is gonna be on the hot seat the next year. But I don't know. I think it's kind of just like a we'll wait and see kind of deal.
I don't know what would hurt Alabama more. What would be a darker day, like the day they lost to Clemson in that with that Deshaun Watson championship, or if they just simply have a 3-loss season. I don't know what would be darker. I don't know what would cause more destruction.
I could see. So I've had multiple conversations with Ken about Alabama, and I think their fan base's expectations are actually pretty realistic. I think they're
being realistic.
The people I have talked to seem to be very realistic. I'm not sure about their general fan base, but I think the general consensus in Tuscaloosa is we need to be okay with a 3-loss season. And here's the crazy part about that is I could easily see a 3-loss Alabama making the playoff.
So what?
It depends on who you lose to and how close it is. If you
I would say 2, you're absolutely right. 3, that's a no.
it depends on who you lose to and how bad the losses are. If you play Georgia and you play Texas close, and then I don't know where another loss would come. If you play those two teams really close, Tennessee, if you play all those 3 games really close and all of those teams are in the playoff.
But in what world would you see? I mean, that would put them as a last minute 12. I would say that there's going to be other one or two lost teams from the Big 12 or the Big 10. They're going to have a better argument.
If you have a combined total of 10 points and those 3 losses all came within a total of 10 points, and you're telling me you're going to put in this is the conversation. Would you
send them over a 1-loss Kansas State?
Who was the loss to for Kansas State, and how bad was it?
Let's just say it was someone, maybe someone out of conference. Maybe just hypothetical. I don't know what their schedule is, but say it was like to an Ole Miss, and Ole Miss was one of the already presumptive 3 teams going into the playoff.
I'd put Alabama in
at the 12 over a 1-loss Kansas State.
That's what I would do.
Okay.
I
think the line is at 2 losses.
I think if you were to play again, and this is
I think there will be another 2-loss SEC team to pick from.
I think you're correct there. Yeah, I definitely think you're correct. I think I could easily,
because the SEC is so big. I think if Alabama's got 3 losses, then you're going to be able to send Georgia, Texas, maybe a Mizzou. And then there's probably somebody else that's only got 2 losses.
We could sit here and try to – I'll be honest. There's an infinite amount of possibilities. We're just going to have to see what happens because frankly, it's really going to come down to, who did you lose to? How bad did you lose to them? And who did you beat? And how bad did you beat them? Because if Alabama loses 3 games and they beat Georgia by 10 – I don't see any reason why Alabama shouldn't be in the playoff with 3 losses.
I don't know. It just depends
especially
on how many 2-loss teams there are.
If Georgia goes on and wins the rest of their games, I don't know.
I think it's very tough for a 3-loss team to make it into this playoff. But I would say
I'm going to tell you right now, there is going to be a conversation that's going to happen with if that scenario were to play out where Alabama has 3 losses. And they are right there on the verge of 11, 12 range. And the competition is between, a 1-loss, Oklahoma State or a 1-loss like Utah. There's going to be a conversation there. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's going to be really – but it could happen. I mean, we've seen crazier, right? So I will say –
it comes down to – who are the losses against, and how bad are the losses?
Yeah, and that's when you start getting into the pageantry to where I just wish there was a formula.
It's college football. The pageantry, and the resumes and all that. It's not going away. It's not.
Yeah, I'm just gonna have to plug my ears for 3 weeks after the regular season, and after championship Saturday, as I always have to because I can't stand it. But all right, we've saved it as long as we can. Thomas. Let's just briefly discuss Texas A&M because I do think they could be a pivotal part of this conference.
Briefly.
It's going to have to be briefly, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, like I said, I think they're a big wild card here because a lot of people were expecting to just be a 7 or 8 win team. I think their ceiling could be an 11 to 10 win team. Their ceiling, that's everything goes perfect to keep everyone healthy. Maybe
let's be honest, Kohl. That we say that every single year. See,
yes, you do.
We've already said that. That's us in Miami, but in this case, it really is more of a wild card instead of any kind of an expectation. Because in this case, we're really we're kind of rolling the dice here. We know we could be up there, but for the last couple of years, we know we've been.
I think the coaching change was the big factor. I mean, you have Elko coming in, who's going to probably handle a lot of the defensive responsibilities, including the head coaching stuff. But Colin Klein is no joke. I mean, you saw what he did with on paper, I believe is the worst talent in the conference with Kansas State for their offense. And he made them the number one offense in the Big 12, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But now Colin Klein has some top talent. Now just imagine his offense with that. I think that's going to be a big factor when Jimbo wouldn't fully give over the play call. I feel like Jimbo was more of a cancer to the Aggies. I think our defense is going to be pretty good, especially with Elko back. But I think our offense, especially that we retained a lot of our players with Wegman too. I think he's going to have a great season, and especially in Colin Klein's offense. And we have a relatively easy schedule compared to someone like Texas or OU. So which makes it not sound like a broken record, makes 10-11 wins more realistic than in years past.
Yeah.
I
think it also gives you time to kind of figure some stuff out too, and not suffer a loss from it early.
Yeah.
But I do think, like
especially
you said,
if we beat Notre Dame next Saturday, I really do. Bert, don't look like that. Don't.
No, I'm just. Is it really next Saturday? Jeez.
Yeah, no, it's next Saturday.
It's 11 days.
Oh, we back. We have people camping out already at Kyle.
Oh, is it? Yeah, it's
next Saturday, not this upcoming, but the following.
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
That makes
Notre
sense.
Dame. I think if we beat them, they're ranked number 8. We're ranked 24. I know
You should beat Notre Dame. You should beat Notre Dame.
At the end of the day, I know rankings ideally don't matter at the beginning of the season. But if we beat them, I think it sets up really well for the rest of the season. I mean, all of our bigger games are going to be because it's going to start the momentum rolling with the new team.
It's a gauntlet, man.
It's a gauntlet, but most of the gauntlet's at home.
It's not as bad as other teams in the conference.
Sure,
gauntlet,
exactly.
But
it's a gauntlet nonetheless. Which I get your point, but again, because we're at home for a lot of those bigger games, it makes it softens it a little bit.
That's fair, but you still have a first-year head coach. There's some factors there that are question marks. To sit here and say you're going to win 10 or 11 games with Georgia's out there and Texas is out there.
But we ain't got to play Georgia. That's the thing.
Yeah,
I know you don't have to play.
You don't have to play Georgia, Bama, OU. I feel like out of the top teams that we're playing,
I just think
LSU. I know we're selling LSU, but ranking wise, right now, I understand the Missouri, but teams like LSU or maybe depending on how the season goes, hopefully
you just again, and this is what we say. To beat a dead horse, you have to win the games you're expected to win. Mm-hmm. And that has been A&M's big Achilles heel. They lose a game they should not lose.
Absolutely. But it's you could attribute most of that to the play calling, though.
No, not all of it. Like I said, I did a whole episode of ranting about all of the downfalls of the last 3-4 years. It came down to offensive line, misuse of the defensive line, and the defense as a whole from DJ Durkin being on crack as a defensive coordinator. Never should have been hired in the first place. Didn't have a good successful career beforehand, especially the Power 5. And then later on, the play calling was a factor. But a lot of the A&M people just went, "Oh, it's all play calling. It's all play calling." No, I really do think a lot of what Jimbo's failures were these last 3 seasons was letting Mike Elko walk, which some of that's out of your control because he wants to be head coach for the exact same reason of why he's sitting in the chair right now that Jimbo was in. But then you replace him with a terrible defensive coordinator that you let hang around for a while because he's flashy and gets some sacks every now and then, when in reality, he has to send 6 or 7 guys to get those, and he still couldn't even get half the sacks that Mike Elko had the year before he was there. Not to mention all the other stuff going on. Like I said, you went from 40 sacks or 39 sacks to 18 from Elko to him. You had an offensive line that was nominated for the Joe Moore Award before Elko left, which is just the timing of like I said, it's not Elko wasn't coaching offensive line, he was defensive coordinator, but this is just the timing. 2020, we had an offensive line that was a finalist for the Joe Moore Award, but lost on votes to an Alabama offensive line that won the whole thing that year, right? So in regards to that's where we were, and then we're 3 straight years of being down to our second or third string quarterback by week 4. In the last 2 years, we're down to our third string by week 6 or 7. It's ridiculous, right? So what I really, like I've said before, what it comes down to with Jimbo, everyone wanted to make a big old hype about play calling. Jimbo's play calling actually early on in his first 2-3 years with us was actually decently fine. It didn't make or break games with us. And matter of fact, a lot of his play calling is the reason that we almost stole one from Clemson at home his first year here. It was awesome. And we really got screwed out of that. But like I said, his main thing was he kept around these 2 guys in particular, between Steve Adazio with the offensive line coach and DJ Durkin with the entire defense as the defensive coordinator. They should have been fired on year 2. He instead just decided to keep those guys around and in replace of their lack of talent to do their freaking job. He tried to take an authoritarian control over everything and just do all the management for them. That's not how you win and manage a roster. So like I said, Elko is not going to be doing that. I think he's going to be putting better people in place. I think the Colin Klein hire is great for the offense in general. I think it's going to be an offense that's going to allow Connor Wigman to be able to stay on his feet a little bit better, just with the play calling in general in regards to what kind of offense Colin Klein will run. It's going to give him more options for checkdowns. I think more RPOs potentially that'll allow him to just have more options, be able to have more checkdowns, be able to spend less time in the back of the pocket thinking, in which case a still inexperienced offensive line, or I guess inexperienced in returns of being good offensive line, it'll give them less time to screw stuff up and less time for Connor Wegman to have to think and potentially spend more time in the pocket getting sacked. So I think that's the main thing here. I think the defense is going to be I think it's going to be a strong suit, mainly because I think we had so much talent on defensive line that was misused last year. Like, because of all the reasons I said with DJ Durkin, I think they're going to be coached better. I think they're going to be a better threat to be able to just rush with 4. Because if you look at Mike Elko's film when he was DC and he had similar talent levels or less, his main thing was we could get so much pressure with 4 or 5 max. And when we needed to send 7, we would get home. That's the thing. But Durkin is the opposite of that. The only way he was able to get pressure is to send 6 or more. And with that, you're sacrificing the coverage to where if you don't get home within 2.5 seconds, there's going to be a wide open cross over the middle. And what did we see for the entire second half of the Alabama game and the Tennessee game? Exactly that. So I think Mike Elko, you'll see more 4-man fronts that are more efficient to where you can get more pressure and just let your talent do the work for you. I think on the offensive side of the ball, we get more out of our skill players because we do have, I think, honestly, the best wide receiver core we've had in the last decade. I don't say that lightly. I do think that they're just in regards to thickness, maybe not that one guy that's just like a Mike Evans, but I think just overall, offensively, the skill players are a lot thicker and we have the most amount of talent to work with, to where if we have that one skill guy that goes down, we do have someone to fill that can at least get 80% of the production and we're not having a huge hole. So that's as short as I can make it, a kind of complete summary of what I'm looking for and kind of summarizing the stuff that we were missing from the previous regime. But it's all those variables that have been changed that make A&M such a, I think they're plus or minus 4 wins, which is a huge swing. Because if they end up being like a 7-win team, it's like, meh, okay. I think that's where a lot of people put A&M between 7 and 8 wins in regards to just directly looking at last year. And they could be a team that ends up with 10 or 11. So that's where I think they sit. I think they really are one of the biggest swing teams and how they have the widest up or down of success.
Well, gentlemen, to spare our listeners anymore.
Yes. We're going to call it wraps after that one. And I'm sorry for doing a little bit of all, but I waited, right? And it wasn't that bad. But
it wouldn't be a War Room podcast without Kohl ranting about Texas A&M football.
Whoa! Hold on, sir.
All right, hey.
I ramble about everything, not just Texas A&M. Anywho, thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate it. For those of you guys that accidentally simmed to your second game and lost to an FCS school in dynasty mode of College Football 25, we stand with you. Okay, we're here for you. All right. And for those that have a dramatic loss of your favorite team on week 1, we're also here with you because that's college football. We're so happy it's back. We're so happy for the excitement, the heartbreak, the drama, all that good stuff. It's finally back.
See y'all week 2.
And we'll see you guys week 2. So thank you guys for listening. We'll see y'all soon. Bye-bye.